Good morning, brethren, and welcome to our bi-weekly program entitled The Word in a Glimpse, which is broadcast live on Facebook every Monday and every Wednesday at 8 a.m. West Africa time, which corresponds to 7 a.m. GMT. Today is Monday, the 1st of May, 2023, and our topic is entitled The Voice of Good Works, Part 3. The Voice of Good Works, Part 3. You remember that we started this topic 2 weeks ago, and we said that our good works are never lost. They are recorded somewhere. They are recorded in the book of remembrance in heaven, and they follow us after our death. Not only do they follow us after our death, but they also speak on our behalf. They speak for us. They speak for our sake while we are still alive. They speak for us to God Himself. They plead for us. They dispose God's heart for us. And we also said that we were created for good works. This is what the Word of God tells us. This is what God Himself says, that we were created for good works, which God Himself has prepared for us beforehand, even before the creation of the world, that we should walk in them, that we would walk in those good works. So we are bound to doing good works, the good works that God has prepared for us. Each of us has a set of good works that God has prepared for him to walk in them. We started giving examples of people who benefited from their good works or even from the good works of other people around them. For example, a whole country, a whole nation can benefit of the good works of one person. The nation of Israel, the nation of Judah, the city of Jerusalem and the nation of Judah benefited from the good works of King Hezekiah, for example. God decided that the enemies of Judah would not invade Judah during the life of King Hezekiah, to whom even God added 15 more years of life, which means that for the coming 15 years, Judah could be spared from being invaded by his enemies. So they benefited from the voice of the good works of King Hezekiah. And we also said that the voice of our good works disposes God to hear and to hear our prayers and answer them. The voice of our good works disposes God to see our affliction, to see our tears, to see our suffering, to see the situation in which we are. The voice of our good works disposes God to grant us healing and deliverance. So our good works can speak to God on our behalf, and God delivers us, and God heals us. All this we saw during the first two teaching. We also said that the voice of our good works disposes God to protect us from the spirit of premature death. King Hezekiah was protected and delivered from the spirit of premature death. So the voice of our good works can dispose God or disposes God to protect us from the spirit of premature death, to cancel death from our lives, to send death, premature death, away from us. And today we're going to continue with other examples of people who benefited from the voice of their good works. And we're first going to read the book of Acts, chapter 9. Acts chapter 9. We're going to read verses 36 to 40. Acts chapter 9, verses 36 to 40. Let's read. At Joppa, there was a certain disciple named Tabitha, which is translated Dorcas. This woman was full of good works and charitable deeds, which she did. But it happened in those days that she became sick and died. When they had washed her, they laid her in an upper room. And since Lydda was near Joppa, and the disciples had heard that Peter was there, they sent 2 men to him, imploring him not to delay in coming to them. Then Peter arose and went with them. When he had come, they brought him to the upper room, and all the widows stood by him weeping, showing the tunics and garments which Dorcas had made while she was with them. But Peter put them all out and knelt down and prayed. And turning to the body, he said, Tabitha, arise. And she opened her eyes, and when she saw Peter, she sat up. This is a very nice story, the story of the resurrection of Tabitha, Dorcas. So the scripture shows us how the voice of good works preserves life and defeats the spirit of premature death. Here, the spirit of premature death had been defeated because apparently Dorcas died prematurely. In fact, Dorcas or Tabitha, both are her names. So Tabitha was full of good works. She was rich with good works. She was helping people, especially widows, those who were unable to buy garments, to buy clothes. She was making clothes for them and giving them. But at a certain time, she fell sick and she died. This also shows us that even though we are in the Lord, even though we can be doing good works, we may be sick and we may die if the day of our death has arrived. But in the case of Tabitha, apparently it was not yet the time, the good time, the right time for her death. Yet she died. And the widows and the disciples who benefited from the good works of Tabitha decided not to bury her because they didn't want to be deprived of Tabitha's good works. They knew that if Tabitha was no more there, they wouldn't benefit from any other such good work again. They wouldn't have garments, they wouldn't have tunics, they wouldn't have dresses. So they said, we are not going to bury Tabitha. we are going to send for Peter, who is in the town of Lydda, to come here to Joppa and do something, because we know that Peter is in direct connection with God. So they sent for Peter, and Peter came to the town of Joppa, and he saw Tabitha's good works. He saw all those good works which the widows were showing him in the middle of tears. And Peter was moved with compassion. So Peter sent them out of the upper room where they have laid the corpse, where they have laid the body of Tabitha. Peter prayed to God because of those good works of Dorcas. And the good works of Dorcas also witnessed to God, telling God that Dorcas actually deserved that God listened positively to Peter's prayer. The good works of Tabitha explained to God how there were so many people who depended on the good works of Tabitha. So many of God's disciples who only depended on Tabitha's good works. So they pleaded to God that God should hear Peter's prayer and answer that prayer. And of course, God heard the voice of Tabitha's good works, and God was moved by the voice of Tabitha's good works, and God restored Tabitha back to life. So you see, Tabitha was already dead. Normally she had to be buried, but her good works pleaded for her. And God heard the voice of her good works. And God's heart was moved by what the good works of Tabitha were telling him. He was moved by the voice of Tabitha's good works. And God restored Tabitha to life. He restored Tabitha back to life. God rebuked the spirit of premature death, and Tabitha came back to life. So the voice of our good works disposes God to rebuke the spirit of premature death in our lives. Let's also read Esther chapter 2. Esther chapter 2, verses 21 to 23. Esther chapter 2, verses 21 to 23. We read, "In those days, while Mordecai sat within the king's gate, two of the king's eunuchs, Bigtan and Teresh, doorkeepers, became furious and sought to lay hands on King Ahasuerus. So the matter became known to Mordecai, who told Queen Esther, and Esther informed the king in Mordecai's name. And when an inquiry was made into the matter, it was confirmed, and both were hanged on a gallows, and it was written in the book of the Chronicles in the presence of the king." Let's also read Esther chapter 6, verses 1 to 3. Esther chapter 6, verses 1 to 3. "That night the king could not sleep, so one was commanded to bring the book of the records of the Chronicles, and they were read before the king. And it was found written that Mordecai had told of Bigthan and Teresh, two of the king's eunuchs, the doorkeepers, who had sought to lay hands on King Ahasuerus. Then the king said, "What honor or dignity has been bestowed on Mordecai for this?" And the king's servants who attended him said, "Nothing has been done for him." You see, good works are never lost. We will always repeat it. Good works are never lost. They are always recorded in God's book of remembrance. And on due time, they will speak for us. They will speak for our benefit. You may even think that the good works that you do today is forgotten, that no one ever remembers your good work, or that no one ever considers your good work. But the truth is that your good work is written and kept somewhere. Your good works is written in the book of remembrance. Your good works is kept in the book of the records of our good works. And in due time, that good work will speak about you, and God will honor you. Jesus said that if we bear much fruit, God will honor us. Doing good works is also equivalent to bearing much fruit. That Jesus explained to us that if we do good works, those good works will raise their voice to speak to God for us, and God will honor us. Let's read our last passage this morning, Luke chapter 7. Luke chapter 7, verses 2 to 5. Luke chapter 7, verses 2 to 5. And a certain centurion's servant who was dear to him was sick and ready to die. So when he heard about Jesus, he sent elders of the Jews to him, pleading with him to come and heal his servant. And when they came to Jesus, they begged him earnestly, saying that the one for whom he should do this was deserving, for he loves our nation and has built us a synagogue. You see, the voice of good works softens God's heart and makes God consider favorably someone whom he initially didn't intend to consider favorably or to have any consideration for. This centurion was not a Jew. And before Jesus was glorified in his death on the cross of Golgotha, only the Jews deserved being deserved being considered by God for healing or for compassion from God. So this centurion didn't deserve Jesus to even hear what he wanted to say. He didn't deserve Jesus to consider his request. Yet, because of his good works, Jesus considered what he wanted, and Jesus healed his servant. You see, the people who benefited from the good works of this centurion told Jesus about the good works of this centurion. And Jesus said, okay, because of those good works, I'm going to grant him what he needs, what he wants. So Jesus healed his servant. So we have all interest to abound in good works. We need to abound in good works because our good works softens God's heart and disposes God for our sake. Dear brethren, we have come to the end of this teaching, the voice of good works. God bless you abundantly beyond all your expectations and have a wonderful week. And please abound in good works.